A well-considered brand identity makes a business startup look professional to investors. The better tailored your marketing efforts are to your chosen customer, the greater the reduction of risk and the more confidence investors can have in your business. Many startups know that a business typically needs a logo, but what is a logo and what makes a good one? It helps to think of a logo as being very much like a national flag. You might notice that flags are often visually pretty simple, and yet somehow they represent a thing as complex as an entire country, often for hundreds of years. Also, more often than not, a flag says nothing obvious at all about the country it represents. There is always symbolism which tells an encoded story, but flags do not advertise. Their job is to simply identify. Flags also serve as a kind of container for our impressions of a country. Everything you have ever read, seen, heard, or felt of Italy, for example, all serves to generate in you an impression, a feeling. And if someone wanted to remind you of that feeling, perhaps to entice you into buying some of their delicious Italian pizza, they could do so by making reference to those three coloured shapes. It is said that a good logo is appropriate, memorable, and simple, but the most important quality a logo should have is endurance. This is because the real power of a logo comes from the emotional associations which customers develop over time. Logos are required to be ready for a number of tasks. We might wish to rearrange logo elements to suit different layouts. We might wish to make patterns. We might want to stamp the logo into a business card, embroider it onto clothing, or perhaps animate it in 3D. It is simplicity which permits all of this flexibility. Indeed, we often find that the biggest companies tend to have the simplest logos. There are exceptions to every rule, however. Coca-Cola are a huge international company with a relatively complex logo which simply doesn't work at small sizes. However, since developing the logo, the company has gone on to create multiple further ways to visually describe their brand, and this allows for the use of more simple iconography at small sizes. This additional iconography, these further ways to identify the brand, are drawn from what designers call brand identity. Brand identity consists of all of the visual elements which describe a brand, along with typography, brand colors, style guides, and so on. But it doesn't stop there. Identity is a huge subject in its own right and encompasses all of the touch points an individual has with an organization. Every time your customer interacts with your business, they do so at one of these touch points. And how those experiences are handled creates in the mind of the customer a perception of your business. We call this perception branding. Branding is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. It is what other people think of your company, and it exists only in the minds of others. We cannot directly control what other people think, but through a well-executed brand identity, we may influence it. In today's market, brand identity is frequently conducted via social media, and today's consumer expects a brand to have a social media presence. Compared to traditional advertising channels, social media marketing is more cost-effective and efficient in engaging with consumers, and studies have shown that the revenue generated from social media consumers is 5.6% higher than for that generated elsewhere. Social media has changed the customer's role from a passive listener to a much more active participant. Brands today do not so much create and deliver a marketing message, but instead, by listening to and collaborating with their social media followers, they co-create the brand. Making the most of social media really means engaging with it, such as commenting on industry-relevant conversations and utilizing hashtags appropriately. Also, it is necessary to communicate in a transparent, honest, and unscripted manner, because users are accustomed to and expect this. When forming your brand identity, do not make the mistake of thinking that you need to appeal to everyone. We humans are hardwired to notice the things which stand out as being different, and in today's saturated marketplace, that is increasingly hard to achieve. Feel free to market yourself in a way which excludes others. Your brand is not for everyone. Recognize also that not every business needs to consider branding and identity to the same extent. A comedian, it could be said, provides their own ready-made brand identity, whereas a new coffee company would need to adopt a different strategy. A brand identity, well executed via social media, builds trust over time. This is incredibly powerful. The more emotional responses you can generate in your customer base, the more trust they build in your brand, and trust equals revenue. The feeling of trust which you generate in your customer base actually has a place to live: the logo. The logo then becomes the memory trigger for all of our experiences with a brand. And because logos must function as a vessel to carry these emotional associations over a long period of time, it helps very much for it to be both simple and unique, just like a flag.